Hi, I'm Peter McNamara, and I'm one of the co-artistic directors of the Sideband collective. So I'm here today with one of the composers on Sideband's latest album, From the Depths, Elizabeth Younan, who's joining me remotely on this rather grey and rainy day here in Sydney. So, Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately for our video performance idea that we had for this particular album launch, we couldn't perform Liz's pieces just because of some practical considerations. But I did still want to discuss your composition Gestures, which is written for alto saxophone, vibraphone, and pre-recorded electronics. So I think it was in 2015 that Sideband commissioned you to create this work for my Sideband colleague Brad Gill to perform with his saxophonist brother Sam Gill. So, what was the brief you were given, and how did you approach that? And was it something you had ever done before, or even considered doing before?
Well, the brief was fairly open. So that was pretty cool. It gave me a lot of depth to do what I wanted. I think the only brief I was given was a time limit. I'd never written for the alto saxophone, the vibraphone, or pre recorded electronics. So completely new experience for me. And it was really enriching to be able to enhance my knowledge in all of those different mediums. Sorry, one sec. Hey Dad, I'm doing I'm doing an interview. Can you please not talk loudly? Okay. So I had never worked with electronics before, so that was a rather steep learning curve, but one that I'm so glad I was able to do. I wanted the electronics to be very much a dialogue with the live performers. So I actually pre-composed, I guess, some excerpts or rather gestures, just small musical cells that I then got Sam and Brad to record. And then I manipulated them, not too much within the electronic sphere, but rather cut in different areas, fragmented, so that it could then create that kind of dialogue between the tape and the live performers. But there were also some extraneous noises I created as well, like dropping some really small pebbles down a staircase in my home, and that created a really cool cascading effect. But with all of these sounds, I really wanted to make sure that they were incorporated into the work in a logical way, so that there weren't just these random sounds that, didn't make sense. And so then I also tried to get Sam to replicate some of those sounds with just key clicks with his sax. So just trying to really blur the lines between the electronics and the live instruments. When I was writing this piece, I had a very conscious spectrum in my mind. So from purely tape to then tape functioning as an accompaniment to tape then being equal with the performers, and then on the other end, of course, just purely live, and then the performers functioning almost as an ostinato or accompaniment to the tape, and then you meet in the middle. So I definitely wanted to explore all of those different points, and I think that comes across in the work.
Yeah, that's definitely something that comes across. But yeah, your pre-recorded part generally is probably a little less processed than the electroacoustic textures of the other works that are on the From the Depths album. Was that something that was, you know, really deliberate that that you tried to do in your approach?
Yeah, I think especially for my first foray into the world of electronics, I didn't want to go too crazy and really process the sounds too much. I did want it to be recognizable to the listeners, rather than them thinking, oh, I don't really know what that is and I can't really hear how that relates to the performers. So it was very much intentional because of that dialogue I wanted to create.
So next question. So largely the textures in your work alternate between these very open and spacious sections that are, well, they're almost free in many respects. And there's other sections that are more rhythmically driven and almost glitchy even. And I think that's those are the sections where you're talking about the sort of more percussive kind of sound. So just give us a bit more insight into that aspect of your composition gestures.
Yeah, well, you've pretty much very beautifully just described what I was trying to do. Again, because I had free reign, because I had never written for any of these instruments or mediums, I wanted to explore as much as I could. Of course, I've barely scratched the surface, but I did want to alternate between these large, spacious areas with minimal electronics. And so the opening, for instance, the opening section of the work could be thought of as an introduction. It's where the little gestures and motifs are very gradually introduced, and it just builds and builds and builds. And there are sections in the work where it is very percussive, and there's a tape part that was actually recorded by Sam. It's just a key click that I then repeated in very specific intervals to create a rhythmic counterpoint. So that kind of acts as almost like a click track, and it creates this very rhythmic interplay between Sam and Brad, and that one key click that then functioned as almost like a metronome. So really trying to explore the extremes in textures, as you said, between these large, spacious sounds, to as minute a detail as possible, to the semiquaver, for instance.
Elizabeth Younan. So thank you for talking to us today about your composition gestures, and hopefully we get a chance to perform it again sometime.
Thank you. And of course, thank you so much for commissioning me to do the work, and immense thanks to Sam and Brad. They really helped with the process, especially because they knew that it was my first time writing for electronics, so they were very helpful. And it was a great collaboration, and I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Time goes very quickly, and Liz, you're very welcome. It was a very interesting piece that you created with you.